With a title like The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, what could this last entry in the storied franchise possibly offer? At first, I wasn't even going to watch this one, but it has Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, so I felt a depressed obligation to finish the series. Much like how The Satanic Rites of Dracula was meant to draw in audiences of the spy genre, this film aims for a different crowd. Yeah, they're going for a martial arts flick this time around. The film opens with a Chinese monk named Ka entering Castle Dracula to seek the Count's help in restoring the glory of the legendary Seven Golden Vampires. Taking control of Ka's body, Dracula leaves and begins a new reign of terror in China. A century later, Professor Lawrence Van Helsing is teaching at a Chongqing school when he hears of the cult of the Seven Golden Vampires and its preying on the locals. With the wealthy Vanessa Buren funding it, Van Helsing agrees to journey forth with his son to rid the land of the vampire menace. Along the way, they are joined by a student named Shi Qing and his 7 siblings, all of whom are highly trained in Kung Fu. This is the first film in the series in which Dracula is not played by Christopher Lee. Instead, John Forbes-Robertson briefly plays him before Shen Chan takes over when the Count possesses Ka. Both actors are dubbed over by David DeCaser, with all 3 of them being incredibly hammy and devoid of genuine menace. Just look at his design, he looks ridiculous. At least we still have Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. I don't know which Van Helsing, as this doesn't seem to fit anywhere in the series' continuity and probably functions as a standalone film. Cushing is the best part of this movie, playing his character with the utmost seriousness. It's difficult to imagine him playing it straight when everything around him is so cheesy, but he somehow pulls it off masterfully. David Chang also comes off better than expected as Shi Qing, capably remaining honorably likable without becoming too bland. The lack of dramatic material doesn't do them any favors, but Robin Stewart and Julie Edge as Leyland Van Helsing and Vanessa each do a reasonable job in spite of mostly being along for the ride. The 7 siblings, however, have no personality whatsoever, dissolving any possibility of the audience caring about them. Most of that has to do with the sloppy script. Before the story begins, there is a glaring mistake. It's 1804 when Dracula comes to China and 1904 when Van Helsing speaks to the class. The dialogue suggests that Van Helsing has fought with Dracula before, but how could he when Dracula was presumably in China for 100 years? He could have defeated Dracula before he possessed Ka, but that would make Van Helsing over a century old. That's not the only problem with the writing here. There are a couple of love stories between the supporting characters, neither of which we care about by the end. The story itself and how it's told is tediously standard, never having any surprises or unexpected developments. Even the effects seem thrown together. The sets themselves are fine and seem like a refreshing change of pace from the gothic ones that we're used to, but the vampires look like Halloween costumes, all resembling each other and lacking any facial movement. However, if you see the title of this movie and willingly decide to watch it, you might get some campy enjoyment watching the admittedly well-shot kung fu fights. There is a certain cheesy charm to some aspects of this that might make it worth your time if you go in for pure, undemanding entertainment. If you expect anything else out of The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, you will be sorely disappointed. The capable performances, martial arts sequences, and occasional embrace of camp elevate it above Dracula AD 1972, but the unpolished script and laughably bad effects still render it utterly inferior to other entries in the series.